Okay, so day 2 recap for the 2023 Vintage Offroad Nationals. This was a much more difficult day than I expected it to be. So I ran in the Classic class, the Classic 4-wheel drive class. And for Classic I ran the Tamiya VQS. So I'll start with that. Overall, the car performed okay, but it's not nearly as good as the Manta Ray, or the Dirt Thrasher that I've run in the past on multiple occasions. It has a taller ride height. It's kind of squirrely when cornering because the center of gravity is higher. It really rolls a lot when you're turning, and so on corner exit, it's hard to be confident in your exit position so that you can, let's say, punch it either going down a straight line or, punch the throttle to clear a jump sequence, because the front hasn't quite settled yet when you're exiting the corner. So you have to go really calmly around the turns and make sure that the car is really squared away before you actually get on the throttle. And that costs a lot of time. But even still, I was able to do okay with the car. I didn't get TQ. I would have gotten it, but I made an error in the second qualifier close to the last lap, and it took me a while to get marshaled, so that cost me TQ by under a second, I think. So okay, and then we go to the main, and what happened in the main? So I started second. I was doing okay. I think I got up to the lead, and then I made a mistake. It dropped me back, but at one point I was starting to catch the leader, and I was making good progress, and then my pinion gear came loose, so I lost power and I couldn't even finish the race. So that was kind of a botched A-main. Looking ahead to next year, would I run the car again? Maybe not. My feelings about it are kind of fresh and raw because I just finished the race today. But comparing that to the Dirt Thrasher, to me, there's no question. The Dirt Thrasher is just a much better car. I'd rather run that and have more fun running it confidently than run the VQS, which is a significantly more difficult car to drive. So yeah, provisionally for next year I'll run the Dirt Thrasher for Classic, unless I can find some other option that's kind of appealing and interesting. For Classic 4-wheel drive, that was just a disaster for the whole day. And even though it was frustrating for the time, it's actually a good thing in the long run because I have a lot of 4-wheel drive buggies, and I want to make sure I get to run them all. And in some ways it's nice to be able to down select them and to say, okay, well, for the kinds of tracks we're going to run on in the near future that I can anticipate, there's no reason to run this subset of cars. Today, that being the 93 Works and the 92 Works YZ10. I started off with the 93 Works for the first qualifying round, and it was wandering a lot. The steering wasn't returning to center, so there was some kind of bind in the steering, and I wasn't able to quite find it. So I figured, okay, well, let me put that aside and run the 92. During open practice in the morning, I tried the 92 out, and it felt fine, but then one or two of the shocks collapsed. So I took the shocks apart, and I found that, the E-rings came undone, and so the pistons weren't, really attached to the shock shaft. They were kind of moving up and down. So I wasn't getting good suspension movement. And these, by the way, are the original black Yokomo shocks that you would get on the YZ10. I've never run them before, so I have no real idea of what to expect. Sure enough, the ones I have kept falling apart. Even when I tried to fix them, they just kept falling apart. So I ran it in the second qualifier thinking that I got the shocks okay enough that I could run it, but the actual suspension setup itself wasn't that good, and I couldn't jump very well with the car. The rear would slap on the jump face, and then it would nosedive in the air, and that would kind of can't remember what I broke, but I ran it in Q2 and it ended very poorly. So then what I decided to do was take the big bore shocks, the associated big bore shocks I have on the 93 works, move them to the 92, because at least I know those shocks work, and then run that for the main, because they only ran 2 qualifiers today. There wasn't enough time to do 3 in the main. So I did that, and I figured, okay, well, at least I'll be able to run the car, and you know, maybe I won't win, we'll see, because I was starting from, I think, 6th position. It was, again, one of those times where four-wheel drive buggy, just like on Saturday, was a disaster every qualifying round, and I had to start the main from near the back. So I was very nervous just trying to be able to drive the car without flipping it or doing too much damage, because I wasn't quite sure how it would handle with these other shocks on it. And it, you know, it handled a little better, but it was still giving me issues with being a little, like, wandering a little bit, not turning exactly how I want, not jumping how I want. So I was just trying to get it around the track. And at one point I was able to catch Jerome, leader, and get around him. I think he had, he flipped over or something, so I was able to get around him. But I didn't hold on to the lead for very long because I flipped over again. And so I dropped down to 2nd, and then I made another error and dropped down to 3rd or 4th, worked my way back up to 3rd, and I just kind of stayed there for the rest of the race. So, you know, with more time, maybe the car can work a little better, but for that particular kind of track layout where the jump faces are very sharp, and it's also it's a very high grip track, I don't think that car is very well suited for it, even with the right camber gain and roll center adjustments that are available on the car, and even with, say, a better suspension setup, it's still not going to jump very well on those sharp jump faces because the chassis doesn't have any kick up. It's a flat chassis, and even with the short bumper that puts the front of the bumper behind the front wheels, it's still not quite enough. So you're much better off with something like the Kyosho Laser or Cat 2000, maybe the EC would be a little better, or a 94 YZ10, because these have to be pre-1995 cars for the classic four-wheel drive class. So looking forward, what would I run next year in classic four-wheel drive? Well, I'm not going to run any of the works cars, assuming that the track will be the same in terms of the type of grip, the kind of layout that we'll have in terms of the way the jumps go. So, okay, I haven't run the Cat 2000 EC for a couple of years. That'd be a good car to run. I could put a 13.5 in that and run it. I could run the Laser again. The Laser does have a flat chassis just like the Works YZ10, but it drives a lot better. So I could run that. Or I can run a 94 YZ10. I have one that I ran in the 10.5 class with years ago that I could put a 13.5 in, clean the car up, get it ready, and run it. That would do quite well. So we'll see. But definitely not the worst cars. I think I can put the Works YZ10s aside for a while. Let's see. So, yeah, not the best performances today, and I'm okay with that. You know, I only got one first place trophy today for all 5 classes I ran. I usually end up with more. This year I had only one. And that's okay. You know, each time you go, you learn things about what to bring and what not to bring, and how to change your approach to preparing for the race. So, already thinking about what I'm going to try next year and how I can kind of zero in on my collection for what to actually run to be more successful. Because I do have a tendency to want to try different things and put myself a bit outside of my comfort zone, but that invariably will lead to years where I'm running cars that are just not meant for that track. And I just have to try to use my whatever talent I have to push the car to places where it's really not supposed to be. This year was one of those years where I was under-equipped with the types of cars I used in certain classes, and I was way too nervous to get the most out of my talent to really push the car. So, alright, whatever. The highlight of the day was the Concourse class. I brought my A&L prototype cars, and I won for most authentic. I was kind of hoping that would be the case because those are original, one-of-a-kind prototypes. So, okay, great. That went very well. A lot of people really liked the cars and they wanted to look at them and pick them up and check them out. So that was very cool, very satisfying to build something like that people really appreciate. Yeah, so I think that's all I have to say about it for now, at least for how Sunday went. Overall, it was great to see my friends. You know, some of these guys, I can only see them once a year. It's always nice to see them and hang out with them for the weekend. I appreciate you all, if you guys are watching. So yeah, next year, I gotta figure out what to do. Let's see. Two-wheel drive buggy, maybe a TRX3, maybe a XX. Stadium truck, maybe a T2 or XXT. Four-wheel drive buggy, the ZXS Evo, if I can get it working right. Maybe the XX4, we'll see. Classic four-wheel drive buggy, maybe a 94 YZ10, so I can just at least run a YZ10 in one of the classes. Or maybe the Cat 2000 EC. And for classic, yeah, I guess the Dirt Thrasher. I'm just going to go back to that unless I can find something else. I thought like maybe to me a Madcap. That looks kind of cool. You know, Eric Reichert has one. He's been running it for years. And it looks like it could do well with a good setup, but that car doesn't have a whole lot of suspension travel. So I'd have to find something that has a bit better suspension to it for a two-wheel drive run. So for now, the Dirt Thrasher. Yeah, I think that's it. So, till next year. Thanks for watching.